Have you ever looked around and wondered why your circle has gotten smaller over the years? Maybe some friends don't call as often. Maybe family visits feel more like duty than delight. It's easy to blame others or chalk it up to just how life goes. But what if, just maybe, there are things we do without realizing that quietly push people away? And the truth is, no one tells us. Not because they don't care, but because it feels uncomfortable. After all, who wants to tell a beloved grandparent or longtime friend that their behavior is becoming a bit off-putting? If you're over 60, this conversation is especially important. Because relationships, connection, and respect don't just matter when we're young. They matter even more as we age. Our presence, our habits, and how we show up in the lives of others deeply affect whether people want to be close to us or keep their distance. So today, we're going to talk openly and kindly about 12 habits that tend to sneak in with age. These are the kinds of things that can chip away at our relationships, not because we're bad people, but because we may not even notice them. And here's the good news: all of these habits can be changed. With just a little awareness and a gentle shift in mindset, you can bring more warmth and closeness into your life. So let's dive in together. Let's talk about the little things that make a big difference, starting with one that might surprise. You know that feeling when you're talking to someone and instead of a conversation, it turns into a one-way monologue. You might nod, smile politely, but inside you're tuning out. Now imagine if that someone is us. One of the most common habits that can push people away, especially as we get older, is dominating conversations. It's easy to fall into this trap without meaning to. We've lived full lives, we've got stories, we've got wisdom, and sometimes we just want to share it. But when every conversation becomes a history lesson, a medical update, or a rant about how things used to be, people start to pull back. Not because they don't care, but because they stop feeling heard themselves. Here's a gentle truth: listening is just as valuable as sharing. Try this next time you're in a conversation. Pause and ask, "What about you? How's your week been?" And then really listen, not just to respond, but to connect. People remember how you make them feel. Make them feel heard, and you'll be surprised how often they come back around. Now let's talk about another sneaky habit: constant complaining. We all have aches and pains. We all face frustrations with technology, noise, prices, and yes, how fast the world is changing. But when complaints become the main course instead of a side dish, they start to wear people down. Think about the energy it takes to be around someone who always sees the worst in things. Now think about how refreshing it is to talk to someone who sees humor in the chaos or finds a little joy, even in a tough day. Which one do you want to be around? Here's the thing: sharing your struggles isn't the problem. We all need to vent. Sometimes it becomes a problem when the venting never stops. It becomes the soundtrack of our presence. And without meaning to, we start to become someone people avoid because they just don't have the emotional energy for another round of negativity. If you catch yourself complaining out loud, try this little shift. Pair every complaint with something good. "My knees ache today, but I'm thankful I still took a walk." Or, "The doctor's visit was a hassle, but at least I'm staying on top of my health." This doesn't mean faking happiness. It just means balancing the scales. People are drawn to hope, humor, and heart. Show them yours. And speaking of balance, let's touch on something many people struggle with, especially in older age: being overly critical or judgmental. Now, I want to say this gently because it often doesn't come from a place of malice. It comes from experience. We've seen a lot, we've lived through more, and it's tempting to think we know best. But what happens when every comment becomes a correction or every visit comes with unsolicited advice? People, especially younger ones, start to feel like they can't do anything right around us. They feel watched, evaluated, maybe even a little scolded. And slowly, the calls get fewer, the visits shorter and the connection weaker. It's not that your wisdom isn't valued, it's that how it's delivered matters. Try replacing criticism with curiosity. Instead of saying, "You're doing that all wrong," ask, "That's an interesting way. How did you come up with that?" Let people feel accepted first, and then they'll be much more open to hearing your thoughts later. One of the greatest gifts we can give as we age is grace. Grace to ourselves and grace to others. The world doesn't need another critic. It needs calm, kind elders who offer perspective without judgment. That's the kind of presence people seek out, not shy away from. If any of this feels familiar, please don't feel bad. None of these habits mean you're a bad person or doing something intentionally harmful. They're just patterns that often creep in with time. But the beautiful part is this: awareness is powerful. Once you see it, you can change it. Before we continue, if you're finding this conversation helpful, I'd love it if you gave this video a like and hit that subscribe button. It helps us reach more people who might need a gentle nudge or a little encouragement, just like we all do sometimes. All right, now that we've touched on how dominating conversations, constant complaining, and critical attitudes can distance us from others, let's move on to a habit that's even more subtle, but just as powerful. A habit that's even more subtle, but just as powerful. And that's withdrawing emotionally. Sometimes as we get older, we start to pull back. Maybe it's because of disappointment, health issues, or simply the feeling that others don't really understand what we're going through anymore. You might start to say things like, "Now what's the point?" or "They don't need me like they used to." And so, bit by bit, you become quieter, less involved, maybe even a little invisible. Here's what people don't always say out loud. When you stop showing up emotionally, when you stop engaging, asking questions, sharing your thoughts, others may interpret it as disinterest. Or worse, they think you've stopped caring. That's when the distance really starts to grow. But the truth is, most people want you there. They want your insight, your laughter, your opinion, even if they don't always say it. Don't let the fear of being irrelevant keep you from being present. Your presence matters more than you think. Try to stay involved in the little things. Ask your grandson about his video games, even if you don't understand a word of it. Ask your daughter about her work, even if she's too busy to go into detail. Show up, stay curious, stay engaged, because when you do, you remind people you're not just watching life, you're still living it with them. Now, closely tied to that habit is another one that's easy to overlook: resisting change. It's understandable. You've had decades to figure out what works for you. Your routines, your opinions, your way of doing things, it's all part of what makes you, you. But when you dig your heels in too much and refuse to adapt, especially when it comes to how the world is moving, it can make others feel like you're stuck in the past and not open to where they are now. For example, think about how often we hear things like, "Back in my day, we didn't need phones to talk to people," or "I don't see why everything has to be so complicated now." These statements may feel harmless or even humorous, but they can come across as dismissive, especially to younger folks who are simply living in a different time. When you reject change outright, whether it's technology, fashion, music, or even how people communicate, you risk sounding out of touch or worse, intolerant, and slowly the people around you stop sharing, not because they don't care, but because they don't feel welcomed for who they are. Now, that doesn't mean you have to love every new trend or force yourself to learn how to use every new app, but it does mean showing a little openness. You can say, "I don't fully understand it, but I'd love for you to show me." That one sentence, it opens a door. It tells the people in your life that you may not be the same as them, but you're willing to walk beside them anyway. And there's real power in that. Openness keeps relationships alive. It shows others that while age may bring wisdom, it doesn't have to bring walls. Speaking of walls, let's gently talk about something that creeps in slowly and becomes one of the most damaging habits of all holding on to grudges. Now, I know this one can hit close to home. Life gives us plenty of reasons to feel hurt. Family misunderstandings, old betrayals, things that should have been said but never were. And sometimes those feelings settle deep. But here's the hard part. The longer we hold on to resentment, the more it takes from us. Not from the other person, from us. Grudges isolate, they drain your energy, and they harden the way you look at the world. You might say, but they never apologized, and that may be true. But forgiveness isn't always about letting someone off the hook. It's about letting yourself move forward. Because when we stay angry, it colors everything. It seeps into our tone, our presence, our ability to connect. Even when we're not talking about it, people can feel it. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean saying what happened was okay. It just means choosing peace over poison, choosing connection over coldness. If someone's hurt you deeply, you don't have to invite them back into your life. But you can release the weight of what happened. Say it out loud, write it down, talk to someone you trust, and then, little by little, let it go. That space it leaves behind, that's where joy starts to return. You deserve that joy. You've earned it. Now, as we go deeper into this conversation, I want to pause and remind you of something important. These habits aren't unique to older people. Anyone at any age can fall into them, but they tend to show up more often later in life, when change feels harder and patience grows thin. That's why this conversation matters, because self-awareness isn't about blame, it's about choice. You can choose to grow at any stage of life. You can choose to soften, to listen more, to be more present. And when you do, something beautiful happens. The people around you feel it. They respond to it. They come closer. Before we move on, I'd love to invite you to give this video a like if it's resonating with you. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can keep getting thoughtful content like this. Stuff that uplifts, inspires, and sometimes gently challenges us to be our best selves. Let's keep going. There's another habit that often gets overlooked but carries a heavy cost. It's when we start dismissing younger generations. You've probably heard it, and maybe even said it. Kids these days don't know how to work. Or back when I was their age, we didn't have everything handed to us. Now, some of those thoughts may have truth to them, sure. But when they become your go-to narrative, people, especially younger family members, start to tune out. No, one likes to feel judged. And younger folks are already under a lot of pressure to figure out who they are in a world that's constantly changing. What they need from us, what they really crave, is encouragement. They want to feel respected, even if their choices don't look like the ones we made. So instead of criticism, try curiosity. Ask them why they chose that job, or why they care about that cause. Share your own story, not as a back in my day speech, but as something they can learn from. Make it a two-way street, because when they feel respected by you, they're more likely to come closer, to share, and to listen to what you have to say. Respect, after all, goes both ways. Let's continue and talk about a few more habits that may be quietly keeping the people you care about at a distance. This next one is a little tricky because it often hides behind good intentions. It's the habit of giving advice, constantly, and often without being asked. You may think, but I'm just trying to help. And honestly, I believe you are. You've gathered a lifetime of lessons, and when you see someone you care about making what looks like a mistake, of course you want to step in. That comes from love. But here's where it can go wrong. When your advice feels more like instruction than conversation, people start to feel like they're being managed, not supported. Think about how it feels when someone tells you what to do without asking if you want help first. Even if their suggestion makes sense, it can feel a little condescending, can't it? Instead of jumping in with, "You should," try starting with, "Would you like my take on that?" Or, "Can I offer you a thought?" That small shift gives people a choice. And when they choose to hear you, they listen more openly because now it's a shared moment, not a one-sided lecture. People of all ages value autonomy. No matter how young or how grown up they are, they want to feel trusted. Offering advice in a gentle, respectful way tells them you see their strength, not just their mistakes. Now let's talk about something a bit more emotional, using guilt to get attention. This one happens quietly, often without realizing it. You might say, "You never call anymore," or "I guess I'm not that important," or "Don't worry about me, I'll just sit here alone." And while it may come from a place of hurt or longing, it can land heavily on others. Instead of drawing people in, it pushes them away. Because guilt is a weight. It doesn't create connection, it creates obligation. And people, especially family members, start to associate you with the feeling of pressure or emotional burden. Over time, they visit less, not because they don't love you, but because they feel drained. So how do you express your needs without guilt? Try being direct but warm. Say, "I'd really love to hear from you this week," or "I miss spending time with you. Do you think we could plan something soon?" That's not manipulation, that's honesty. And honesty, wrapped in kindness, invites closeness. People want to feel wanted, not blamed. When you let them know you miss them without making them feel like they've failed, you open the door for real connection. Let's move on to another subtle but impactful habit: neglecting your appearance or personal hygiene. Now, I want to approach this one with care. Aging comes with all sorts of challenges: limited mobility, health issues, energy dips. It's not always easy to keep up with the routines you used to. But the truth is, when you stop caring about how you present yourself, it doesn't just affect you. It affects how others experience being around you. That doesn't mean you need to be dressed up or polished all the time. But showing that you've made an effort, brushing your hair, putting on clean clothes, smelling fresh, it communicates something important: self-respect. And here's something people often overlook. When you take care of yourself, others feel more comfortable around you. They see you as someone who still values life, who still takes pride in being part of the world. It makes visits more pleasant. It makes conversations feel lighter. It reminds them that you haven't given up and that they don't need to feel sad or guilty when they're around you. So even if you don't feel like it some days, try to take that small step. Not for vanity, but for dignity. You matter. You're worth the effort, and others feel that, whether they say it or not. Now let's explore something that might seem harmless, but can really chip away at your relationships. Always needing to be right. You've lived through decades of change, conflict, and life lessons. You've earned your perspective. But when every disagreement becomes a debate you have to win, people start to shut down. Not because they don't respect your opinion, but because they don't feel safe to share theirs. No one wants to feel like they're in a courtroom every time they talk to you. It's okay to have strong beliefs. It's okay to stand by your values. But it's also okay to say, "That's interesting, I hadn't thought of it that way." Those words, open hearts, they tell people you're secure enough in yourself to not need to dominate the conversation. And you know what? People often remember how you made them feel more than what you actually said. When you let go of the need to win an argument, you win something far more important: trust, closeness, and respect. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to bring us back to the heart of it all. These 12 habits we've talked about, they're not signs of failure. They're not flaws that define you. They're simply behaviors that over time can slip in unnoticed. But once we see them, we can do something about them, because you are still growing. You are still capable of change, of connection, of love. And the people around you, your children, your friends, your neighbors, they want you in their lives. They want the best version of you, not the perfect version, just the one who's present, open, and kind. Let's quickly remember what we've touched on today: dominating conversations, constant complaining, being overly critical, emotional, withdrawal, resisting change, holding grudges, dismissing younger generations, giving unasked advice, using guilt, neglecting self-care, needing to be right, and pushing people away without meaning to. Each of these habits may seem small on their own, but over time they build walls, they create distance. The good news is, even one change, just one, can start to bring people back. You don't have to fix everything at once. Just pick one area and work gently on it. Maybe you listen more this week. Maybe you give a compliment instead of a critique. Maybe you let someone be different from you and love them anyway. That's how connection grows. Remember, it's never too late to be the kind of person people are drawn to. The kind who radiates calm, warmth, humor, and acceptance. You've lived long enough to know that life is too short for bitterness, and just long enough to keep becoming someone you're proud of. If you found this helpful or encouraging, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and reach others who might need the same gentle reminders. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. We've got so many more meaningful conversations to share with you. And finally, I'd love to hear from you. Has anything we talked about today resonated with you? Have you caught yourself in one of these habits? Or maybe you found a way to reconnect with someone after a rough patch? Share your story in the comments. We read every single one, and your words might just help someone else feel a little less alone. Here's to living your best life at every age, with grace, with love, and with open arms. You've got this.